energetic, passionate, and savvy. Gouche Live, brought to you by the good people at the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Gouche.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Hey, Shoppy, I sit in front of my Winnipeg Jets dressing room. They lost 3-0 last night. Horrific.
I saw it. Yeah,
I'm down in the dumps. But your Ottawa Senators did well.
Yeah, great game. 4-0 against Montreal. Great game. I saw it. Yeah. Tim played very well again.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's unbelievable.
The young kids are developed great now in Ottawa.
Yeah.
I think that's a team for the future. Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, Shoppy, get right into it. Tell us what's going on in DEL.
Yeah, DEL today we had the last games. Tuesday start the playoffs. And now everybody's exciting, but no West teams is in the playoffs. Krefeld, Düsseldorf, and Cologne finished the season now today. And the first time in the league that no game from West is in the playoffs. Unbelievable. Yeah. And we're very exciting now. It's a very interested playoff round because we have only best of 3 because Corona and because the German national team has to prepare for the World Championship. So the first round ends the next Saturday. Then we have the half final and the final. Every round's best of 3. Yeah. So we'll see. Mannheim is the top team in the first round now, the most points. They qualified for the European Championship next season. And the other team is Berlin, qualified for the European Championship. But very interesting things happen in soccer this weekend because Hertha BSC Berlin is the first club in the Bundesliga who has to go in quarantine for 2 weeks now. And that's very difficult for this club because this club play against the relegation. And so they have left 6 games only in May. They have to play every second day. And that will be a big problem for Hertha BSC. And now the league is very angry if the Corona hits the league at the end of the season. Maybe some teams go in quarantine for themselves in hotels before they play. And another big story to this weekend, the coach from Bayern Munich, Hansi Flick, said he will cancel his contract end of the season. That's a big surprise in German soccer because he has a contract until 23, and now Bayern Munich is big in trouble. In what happened there, the coach had a lot of problems with the manager there, and now he said, "Okay, I can't hear you." Now I can hear you. Yeah.
Modern technology. Can you explain that? Because that's really unbelievable to understand.
Yeah. Because Hansi Flick, the coach, the last 2 weeks he had some problems with the manager, Salihamidzic, and now Hansi Flick said, "Okay, I cannot work with him together, and I would cancel my contract end of the season." He said it yesterday before the game in Wolfsburg, and everybody is surprised. Nobody from the bosses, the owners, expected, but I think he will be the new national coach, German national coach, after the European Championship. Yeah, that's very, very interesting things in Germany now in soccer. Yeah.
So obviously, Bayern losing out against PSG was not unexpected. It was obviously, losing their top goal scorer, and they obviously must be really tired. Coming off another championship in Germany just makes so much sense that you're going to have a downward. There's no question.
Yeah, because Hansi Flick he won 6 titles in 1 year with his club,
Unbelievable.
and he has his ideas for the future. But the manager, Salihamidzic, said, "No, I have another ideas." And so Hansi Flick said, "Okay, then I have to cancel my contract." But I think he knows that he will be the next German national soccer coach for that he was assistant coach from Jogi Löw, from our assistant from our coach, and I think he will be the next coach for the national team after the European. Yeah.
So explain to us then, in the national program, can you be a coach of a Bundesliga team and the coach of Germany,
No,
or is that just too much? You're not allowed.
That's too much. That's too much.
All right.
It's not possible in Germany. No.
So that makes sense, because it didn't. I could not understand why a guy would do that. All right, let's talk a little bit about Krefeld. I know we always come around. We had Kevin Shea in the green room. We talked about Kevin finally meeting you one day, and as we've talked about, Franz Reinl and I've been kicking it around. We are going to do a Legends tour in Germany. All the old German imports like myself, hopefully Mark McKay, and the list goes on and on. And we'll play against the old German national team. It'll be a lot of fun. Maybe we can get some of the old guys. Alice Schroeder. I don't even know if he skates. Eric Coonakel would be great to face off against him. It'd be a lot slower than it was back in the old days, but and we'll do some of the predominant cities like Krefeld, Munich, obviously Timmendorf and Hanover. So I think that'd be a lot of fun. Talk to us about Krefeld right now with the Psyche. Playoffs are now decided, and where you mentioned they've got the new sponsorship. Where do the fans sit in all of this?
Yeah, the fans are very disappointed what happened this season. We had the worst season ever in the GEL, in the German league, this season, because the new investors made so many mistakes. The young kid is 25 from Latvia. He makes so many mistakes, but now he has a coach from North America with Clark Donatelli, and next week, or they go to North America. They watch some games in the under 18 World Championship in Dallas, and then they go to some HL games and some East Coast Hockey League games, and looking for new imports. Yeah, and I hope Clark Donatelli, he has a good connection there overseas, and he will find some good new imports. We need minimum 3 good Ds from North America, or imports from Russian or whatever, from Czech, but that's a big thing to find good imports for the next season. And I think the investor has a good idea to find new sponsors and new guys who invest also in Krefeld hockey, and we will see. We have now a very excited summer in Krefeld. We will see what happened, what he will do, what the investor will do, what is his plan. And Donatelli said in interview with our newspaper, we will play for a playoff spot next season, and then they have to find good players.
How often have we heard that one? Listen, as we wrap you up with the DL, I just wanted to ask you, what's the mood in German ice hockey right now? Obviously, Leon Draisaitl, playing as well as he is here in the National Hockey League. Of course, Tim Stützle has really ignited the fans and kept them focused, and you get to see a lot of those games. But in general, obviously, the young kids aren't playing. Is there any lack of excitement for ice hockey in Germany at this moment, because those kids can't play? Obviously, the Bundesliga kind of overwhelms everybody when it comes to sports. So these kids aren't probably seeing the Edmonton Oilers or the Ottawa Senators playing because they're probably in bed at that time. Do you feel there's going to be any backlash on what's going on right at this particular moment?
Yes, we have a bad season because Corona, but a few clubs need this situation to develop young players in the DL teams. We have so many young players in every teams, in Nuremberg, in Munich, in Düsseldorf, everywhere. In the normal season, they wouldn't play in the DEL, but this kid's very excited that they can play in the DEL, and they developed very, very good. In Krefeld, Alexander Blanc, he is 19. He has an unbelievable season in the DEL, his first season. Now he is in the spot of rookie of the year in the DEL. And we have some other players in other clubs in Cologne, Düsseldorf, Munich. They develop very, very good. And I think they look every night. They look the NHL games, the videos, the highlights. And under 18 team is now in the World Championship in Dallas in April, end of April. But I think they have not so good players than the under 20 teams, but I think they have a good chance to get in the last round there. Maybe we can do an interview when the German flight tomorrow to Dallas from Frankfurt.
Yep. Yes.
Maybe we can do a interview with Stefan Ziesche. He is the head coach from the under.
Absolutely, yeah, that would be fantastic.
And when he is in Dallas, I will call him and we can do an interview.
Can you organize that? That would be absolutely amazing if we could do that. Listen, Shoppy, just before I let you go now, I'm going to bring up our good friend, Kevin Shea. Of course, you follow him, one of the hockey historians. I know I'm going to get Kevin to do this one day. We're going to try and figure out who we know in our hockey ranks who actually lived or played in Krefeld, or as we always joke around, had at least a schnitzel or a coffee there, or maybe a beer. Tell me about, I see Michel Bertz is here. Obviously, he must be very sad with the news with the Munich team. But as important, Timmendorfer Strand, as you know, had already had struggles to keep the rink alive. It's deep into my heart. My jersey still hangs there with Marvin Glazer and Mark McKay. So it's a very special spot for myself and Mark. And Mark and I were talking about this. A place like Timmendorf, how will they ever come back to play ice hockey when it's going to be probably a year and a half before they get an opportunity to play?
Yeah, every teams in the third or fourth league are planned for the next season. They hope that they can start in September and October again, and they build new teams. Like Essen Mosquitoes, they have a new coach and they have new sponsors, and every club hopes that they can start again in this season, end of summer, with practice, and then we will see what happened with Corona. That nobody knows what happened. If now everybody hopes that so many people are vaccinated with until autumn, and then they hope that they can have suspectors, people in the ring. They start now new programs to let in the fans in September, maybe half full rings we can have, and that will be the big question in summer. What happened? Yeah. And that's not in Germany, that's overall in Europe now. And Austria today had the last final playoff games, I think, between Klagenfurt and Bozen. Yeah, and then we have to wait. It's difficult.
All right.
For the clubs. Yeah, it's difficult.
No question.
For the clubs. Yeah.
Listen, Shoppy, for sure, we're going to make a promise here. If, in fact, we're back playing ice hockey in Germany next year for 2022, even maybe at the end of this year, let's not count it out. Let's not discount it. You and I'm going to fly over, and you and I will go to Davos and watch the Spengler Cup.
Yeah, that will be great. When the Spengler Cup, I was there with Krefeld when Krefeld won the championship 2003.
I know that.
It's an unbelievable tournament.
There's no better place to watch hockey, ice hockey around the world. I know Jordan, our assistant producer, he talked about it yesterday. He was over. We're doing that. All right, Shoppy, we can't thank you enough for keeping us informed. Give us a couple of minutes of your busy schedule every week to tell us what's going on with the DL. But please, if it's possible, love to get an interview with Siska, and we could talk about all the great things that are going to go on for the German team. Obviously, they got their hands full, but let's see what happens there. All right?
Yeah, okay. Have a nice evening, nice show with Kevin, and see you.
Auf Wiedersehen. Prost, mein lieber Schatz.
Okay. Ciao.
Yeah, buddy. Shoppy's always a great guy to talk to, I'll tell you. He's very knowledgeable, not only in hockey, a big ice hockey fan, even from the days I was there with Andy Pritchard and Krefeld and Greyfrath, of course. And when we won the German championship, he was a big part of it. 1996, I think it was, when we hoisted the cup in. And I know Shoppy was there taking pictures. He was unbelievable. Now, listen, got a great show today. Obviously, last night I had an opportunity to talk to Jordan. We talked a lot about his career, him flying around the world. That's why I brought up the Davos. I want to go back. I've only been there once. I want to go back. So if we can do it this year, I'm going. So please, 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 pandemic, go away, because we want to do that. But my next guest, as you know, is here every Sunday. He's always got a special something for us. And this one is a special it gets. The brothers that played in the National Hockey League, the biggest historian I know, Kevin Shea.
Well, the biggest only because of the pandemic. I've put on those extra pounds, but we're working very hard at getting those down, Kerry. So there we go.
Yeah,
hey,
I'm sorry.
Isn't Shoppy extraordinary? Was he ever a player?
No, I never really asked him. He's a big tennis player. So I don't know how he got heavily involved in hockey. I should ask him that one day. And I also think that when I said biggest, I meant greatest. Oh. So a little bit of tongue tied there. So I apologize, because the biggest would be me, because I just finished an hour walk with Tony. We went through a forest. I know it says stay at home, but we went 7 kilometers, which is large for this kid. Sure. And I enjoyed it. So it was a great time. Kevin, I know we're going to talk about brothers. My brother and I never actually got to play together. When he was young, he took a slap shot to the temple side of his head. He was a very, very good hockey player. And that shied him away. He never went back to play, and I was too young. I would have loved to have played with my brother. You know, I know that you're very close to your brother too. It's something that would have been spectacular. Just think, well, number one, I didn't even get to the NHL, but just think about it. If you and your brother played in the National Hockey League.
Or even in a minor league team or something, would have been so much fun. You know, it's funny, and we're going to talk about this at length a little bit later on. But in my case, my brother was not a very good hockey player. He only played for 1 year, had a real difficult time skating, and I think it's because he had my hand-me-down skates, and so just didn't really have the support of the ankles. And yet on the baseball diamond, he was outstanding, whereas I was all field, no hit. So whereas I was the better hockey player, Dale was the much better baseball player. And it's just funny because we all come from the same DNA, have the same opportunities, all these sorts of things. And yet it's funny how the balance goes as far as talent. So we're going to talk about that a fair bit over the next many minutes and see how that plays out with NHL players as well.
Well, obviously, you see behind me, I've got my Winnipeg Jets. I'm not a bandwagon jumper. I'm going to stay there. They played very poorly last night. Or did Edmonton play that well? And I hope we could see that as a final, or sorry, as a playoff series. I know you're a big Toronto Maple Leaf fan, so before we get into the brothers, I got to ask you this question: who are you looking forward most in the playoffs in the North? Are you looking at Toronto, Montreal? Do you think that's going to happen? Hasn't happened since 1979, or the Winnipeg Jets, of course, and the Edmonton Oilers. Also, it's been a long time since they've met, but both of those matchups would be exciting, creative, explosive, but most importantly, it would be a war.
Yeah, I love this North Division entirely right now. I would love it to open up with Winnipeg playing Edmonton, Toronto playing Montreal. I think there's some nice rivalries there already, but I would like to see the final. please, I'd like to see Toronto versus Winnipeg, because in my eyes, they're the elite of the North, and just have the two of them battle. You and I going at it, wrestling every week to see who's going to be the one who's going to emerge. But I think that would be a really, really exciting playoff. And then, after we find the champion of the North, to see where it goes from there. But I would love to see those lineups and those matchups rather, and see where it goes from there.
Now, Kevin, I don't want to make this about Corona, but obviously we've seen what's gone on in Vancouver. Vancouver's going to play against the Toronto Maple Leafs today.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to be a shell of a team. It's not going to be. Are you concerned at all what's going to transpire over the next couple of weeks? Obviously, you see here in North America, it's an explosion again. These teams are still traveling by planes, crossing borders, and that. Is that a concern for you at all?
It's a huge concern to me, personally and professionally. Let's just talk about the hockey side of things now. We had William Nylander of the Toronto Maple Leafs, having to sit out several games and test, and he tested negatively. He might be in the lineup tonight. We'll wait and see. There's a good chance of that. He's practicing with the team now too. But that was the first time that it kind of hit close to home. Obviously, Austin Matthews some time ago had tested positive too. But to see what happened in Vancouver and to find out how quickly it can happen, to hear Bo Horvat talk about how his wife also contracted COVID and worried about their infant son. I mean, on a personal level, you worry about your family first and foremost, but you worry about the team too. The way that Vancouver was just decimated over the last little while because whatever it was, 24 people having tested positive for COVID really is impactful on the team, on the NHL, their fan base, and it could happen so easily. So you just never know. You never know.
Final part on that, of course, we heard Travis Green speak very emotionally, very forthright, almost concerning when he said, he was so concerned about his players. And then he said, I had to become selfish and start thinking about myself because he was that sick. So we wish them nothing but the best. It's not about hockey when it comes to this. So hopefully we see a good game and hopefully Vancouver can get through this. And of course we see that the National Hockey League gets through to the raising of the Stanley Cup. And hopefully it is the Winnipeg Jets or the Toronto Maple. I would be happy with either one of them hoisting the cup. And
I think I would too, although I definitely lean more one way than the other, but I would be very happy that way as well. So we will see. We'll see how this whole pandemic plays out. It's worrisome in the community to find out how many people every day are being tested positively, and you worry about how that impacts the whole community, how everything gets shut down. So all we can do is follow the rules, and hopefully we can get this thing, flattened and move on with our lives.
That we will. I'm just posting this. Matthew Meisner. Thanks, boys. Back to the Buffalo game. I'll catch the rest of the show. He's on all the time. He's from Argentina. He's actually a Buffalo. I think you probably know this already. But what's amazing about him, I was watching the game yesterday, and what I found, Buffalo looks really good. Like, all they had to do is get rid of Hall and a couple of coaches, and all of a sudden now they're almost like world beaters. And we talked about it yesterday. If Ottawa Senators started the season right now, they could look like a playoff team. I'm not going to go that far and say that about Buffalo. But I did want to say, I was listening to the reporters yesterday, play-by-play, and they say the Buffalo Sabres fans are not upset. They haven't started burning the jerseys or tearing down the city. They're optimistic that they're going to turn this around in the next couple of years.
They've got some good young players. They've got a pretty good core, all in all. Hopefully, some strong draft picks this year as well. But it's tough whenever your team is struggling. I mean, when Toronto, and just because that's where I'm living right now, and so I'm such a fan. But when Toronto has hit the dumpster over the past several years, the place goes crazy. Still go to all the games, but you're right. Next thing you know, waffles are being thrown on the ice, or jerseys, or people are putting bags over their heads, and it's doom and gloom. And yet we still attend all the games. It's just an odd scenario, and you just hope for the best. You know that there are ebbs and flows with every franchise, but boy, it's tough when you're down at the bottom for a long period of time.
Absolutely. All right, Kevin, let's get into brothers. A great topic. You presented it to me and I said yes right away. I can remember, as we were talking about it earlier, our brothers didn't play. I can remember the days where my sister was dressed up in Eaton's catalogs. We got her a little chest pad. We had a glove. We did put some sort of a mask on, I recall, and it was my brother that did it all. It wasn't me. And we'd be shooting tennis balls with my sister downstairs in the basement. Well, she's no longer with us, but of course, Lawrence and I blame Lawrence. Lawrence blamed me, but certainly it's a special, special moment. So let's talk about, obviously, arguably the two best. We're going to talk about Maurice and Henri Richard. Oh. How many Stanley Cups did they have between them? It's just absolutely amazing.
It's extraordinary. Henri had 11. Maurice had 8. And in fact, the two of them, when they played together during that late 50s dynasty, had 5 consecutive. It's an extraordinary story.
Yeah.
Very different kinds of brothers, very different players as well. But boy, oh boy, those Richard boys could play. So Maurice was...
Here's a great picture of Maurice, and we'll hear you describe it.
There we go. So Maurice was 15 years older than Henri. So by the time that Henri was, getting up on his feet and starting to play, his brother was already starring and going from there. But Henri could look up to his big brother and realize what a star he was and wanted to be the one to play in the NHL the same as his brother. Maurice was that fiery guy, and boy, if I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times, that from the blue line in, there was nobody better than Maurice the Rocket Richard. Those fiery eyes, just looking right through the goaltender. He'd go through you as quickly as go around you. Henri, on the other side, was built entirely different. He was a smaller player, whereas Maurice was the Rocket. We called Henri the Pocket Rocket. He was a smaller version. He was much more skill-oriented. He definitely had a fierce streak as well, but not like Maurice did. But both of them were just extraordinary players for the Montreal Canadiens. Maurice starting back in the 1940s. There was a time where it was discussed that he may not be a very good NHLer because he broke his leg early in his NHL career, and it seemed to have some impact on him. But nevertheless, in 1944-45, he scored 50 goals in 50 games. So there was no doubt he was going to do all right in the NHL. The very first player to ever hit that 50-goal plateau. And it just went on from there. 8 times a first-team All-Star, 6 times a second-team All-Star. Might as well just sign him up even till today. Geez, won the Hart Trophy. But it was those 8 Stanley Cup championships, 5 in a row, that just were great. In fact, the very final game he ever played, 1959-60, was the Canadiens winning the Stanley Cup, and Maurice retired before the next season. Henri started in the 50s with that whole dynasty in 55, 56 and what going on. He continued into the 70s and later on was actually a captain of the team, just like his brother was. First team All-Star once, second team, I think it was 3 times for that. So both were elite hockey players. There we are. We see Henri there with the Stanley Cup that has his name on it more than any other active player. 11 times. Nobody else can beat that. Other players like Beliveau have had their name on the trophy more, Scotty Bowman, but nobody as an active player has won 11 trophies, 11 Stanley Cup championships like Henri Richard. So the two brothers right at the top of the list, not necessarily the most productive, but one of the great brother acts of National Hockey League history.
So, Kevin, if you don't mind just telling us about, you've said it, he's the most with his name on the Stanley Cup. Yeah. But what happens? There's only so many rings. Could you just give us a real quick? So, his name is not 11 times right now on the Stanley Cup they're hoisting, right?
No, not right now. So in order to keep the Stanley Cup the same shape as it is right now, what ends up happening is that when a band, those bands that circle the base of the Stanley Cup, reach completion, so it's usually 13 teams, when they reach completion, then what ends up happening is they take the top band off, the top of the big bands, retire it to the vault at the Hockey Hall of Fame, move each of the bands up, and put a new band on the bottom. So the very top band that was taken off had all 5 of those Stanley Cup teams we talked about with the Montreal Canadiens. So names like Maurice Richard, Butch Bouchard, Jacques Plante are no longer on the Stanley Cup. They're retired now and in the vault at the Hockey Hall of Fame. So it's a shame in some case, but there's just no way that you can continue making the cup so tall. It would be unwieldy and impossible to even carry and go on from there. So that's the way that things are treated these days.
Well, I know that obviously I've been in the vault and have seen the original little Stanley Cup, and then they put all the plaques. So if you get a chance, obviously when we get out of the pandemic, if you've not already seen the Hall of Fame, it is amazing what the transformation from when they moved there till later was absolutely incredible. Like it's worth, you could spend a couple of days there and still not see everything. So, and you're very fortunate to be able to go there almost on a regular basis. Kevin, talk to us a little bit about moving next. That's right. Thank you. Val has showed up and unfortunately has placed, I actually got married there, as you would know, Kevin.
Yes.
And my change room was in that vault. And there's a picture of me changing into my suit. And it's not pretty. Like there was a moon. Let's just say there was a moon and it wasn't the real moon in there. So thank you for that. Thank you for reminding me of that, Val. You're such a nice human being. All right, so let's move on from there. Talk to us a little bit about the next pairing. This is as great a pairing as you can get. Obviously, one being a goalie, one being a forward, a very prolific both in their own rights in those positions. And of course, we all remember Phil Esposito in 1972 when he made that speech that brought the nation together. First, let's talk about Tony.
Well, Tony's the younger of the 2 Esposito brothers, and Tony took a different path to the NHL than Phil did. Phil went through the junior ranks and then went up to start with the Chicago Blackhawks. Tony went through the U.S. college route, and was a star that way before he joined, here's a surprise for many, the Montreal Canadiens. He's actually got his name on the Stanley Cup as a member of the Montreal Canadiens, where he was just he played very, very sparingly during the 1968-69 season, but he's got his name on the Stanley Cup from the Montreal Canadiens before he joined the Chicago Blackhawks, which is where he made his legacy for sure. A great goaltender, and I wouldn't say he was the first of the butterfly goaltenders because, it wasn't called butterfly, but Glenn Hall actually played a similar style in a way. Everybody had been a stand-up goalie up till that point, but Glenn Hall would go down and down on his knees and block shots. So although it's not a butterfly necessarily, he would probably precede Tony, but Tony was the one who really popularized it and then opened the doors for people like Patrick Roy and so many others, especially out of Quebec. Tony, a great goalie, boy, oh boy, and left-handed too. He held the stick in his left hand, so caught with his right, which was a rarity. There had been, Roger Crozier. There'd been a handful of players through the years, but not many, that's for sure. Just a great goalie, and in the Hockey Hall of Fame for good reason, joining his brother, who's also in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
So before we move on to obviously Phil, I wanted to say that I've been blessed because I've been able to travel around the world and meet some of these with Scott McPherson. I was in Moscow with Phil Esposito and had an opportunity to chat a little bit about, you got alone time with him. And Tony, my sister, and my wife, not my sister, oh my God. My wife and I were sitting around a table and everybody was yakking. I was sitting beside Phil and I asked him some questions. He told me a story about Tony Esposito, and it's one that you probably have heard this story before. He was an innovator. Like he fooled around with his equipment a lot. And there was this slap shot. They were in Boston, and one of the defensemen had taken a slap shot from the Boston Bruins, and it hit Tony, and it came out faster than it went in. And they found out that he had a little netting between his legs. Have you ever heard that story?
I forgot about it, but yes, I did. I have heard that story. Yeah. Again, you take every advantage you can. Sorry, go ahead, Kerry.
Yeah, no, that's it. That and so when you and the chuckle, Phil and the so it's kind of funny that he would bring that up, to somebody like me, like, wow, okay, that's pretty. But I guess a lot of people knew about it. But then Phil himself, obviously a big man for the time. I also, in that conversation with Phil Esposito, had an opportunity to talk to him about a German player. His name was Eric Coonakel. Eric is no question known as the Gretzky of German ice hockey. He was over talented, and I did not know it, but Eric had roomed. He was brought over by, I think, drafted by the New York Rangers, and Phil Esposito was his roommate.
Oh,
because they wanted him, to kind of get him ready for the life here in North America and play with the New York Rangers. And he got homesick and went home.
wow.
So he never, And Eric was, I know him just a wonderful man. So that was kind of cool to hear that from Phil. Talk to us about not only Phil, the hockey player, but the leader that he is very well known as.
Well, absolutely. Let's talk about being a leader on the ice. I mean, he won the Art Ross Trophy as the leading scorer 5 times. You think about those Boston Bruins teams of the let's start with 1970. I mean, the Boston Bruins had been just a moribund team. They just were not very good. And then all of a sudden, Bobby Orr joins the team in 66, 67. Then they get Sanderson. And then the big trade that brings over Phil Esposito, Fred Stanfield, who else? Ken Hodge from Chicago to Boston. And it just changed the entire dynamic of the Boston Bruins. And, Phil had that big frame. He would stand where we see him in this picture, just outside of the crease, and he'd pick up what many people call garbage goals, picking up the rebounds off the goaltender's pads and throw them into the net. And I remember seeing bumper stickers when I was a little kid, and it would say, Jesus saves, but Esposito scores on the rebound. And that was the story. I mean, he just had his place, and he used that big warp stick too. But to lead the NHL in scoring 5 times, winning the Stanley Cup twice in there, 1970 and 1972. But I think where most people saw the leadership, not just with the Bruins, but was with Team Canada, which Tony also played on. But when Team Canada was put together, and they struggled against the Russians, the Soviets, I guess I should say. It wasn't Russia then.
Yes.
The Soviet Union. In that first game, they lost. They win in Toronto. They tie in Winnipeg. They go to Vancouver for the 4th of 4 games in Canada, and they lose. And Phil Esposito, as the acting captain, goes out and does the interview. And he didn't pull any punches. He stood there and talked to the viewers, which were in the millions at that point, and talked about, hey, you Canadians, we need you to stand behind us. We're doing the very best we can. We can't have you booing us. You have to support us, and it's a shame that you're not. And it seemed that kind of turned things around. The Team Canada went to Russia from there, and the number of people who actually went to follow the team in the thousands, Canadians who went to see the team play, but the number of people who sent telexes and messages of all sort, they put them all up over the dressing room, and it seemed to give the team an extra spurt of energy. And from there, as we know, the Canadian team ultimately, with Henderson's goal in Game 8, won the series. But it was much closer than anybody thought. And Phil Esposito played a really, really key role in that as well. Henderson scored the 3 overtime winners, but he and Phil tied for the most points in the series too. Phil was a really decisive member of that team and a real leader as well.
Now we're with Kevin Shea, arguably one of the greatest hockey historians in my eyes.
Yours only. Yours only.
No, many people. Hang on, watch this. Kevin is quite the historian. Love this episode. Will Clark says, I couldn't imagine playing without helmets and trying to load up a slap shot with wood twigs. Think about being a player, but think about Johnny Bauer with no mask.
Oh gosh, absolutely. We talked about Glenn Hall a few minutes ago. Glenn Hall holds the record, unlikely to ever be broken, for most consecutive games by a goaltender. I can't remember the number, but it's 360 or something like that. And he played every one of those games with no mask on, with a chest protector that was probably, what, a 16th of an inch thick, with gloves that might as well have had no padding at all. It's just unbelievable at that point. And no backup goaltender. So if you got hurt, you lost some teeth, you got a cut, go to the dressing room quick and get out back on the ice as fast as you can. The backup goaltenders came later on. There he is.
Glenn Hall. Thanks.
Glenn Hall.
Thanks, Val and Jordan, for pulling the pictures up. Val, that was fast. Really well done. Hey, listen, just as we move on from the Esposito brothers, David Carlson's asking, Phil scored 76 goals one season, did he not?
Yeah, he sure did. Broke the record at that point. I mean, it's been eclipsed by Wayne Gretzky, obviously, but it was unheralded how many goals. I mean, to get 50 in a season seemed astronomical. To hit that plateau was beyond belief. So it was, Bobby Hull and Boom Boom Jeffrey on, and there we go. Then all of a sudden, Phil Esposito comes along and he scores 76 and leads the league in scoring, not only goals, but in points too. Just quite an achievement. Now, it was a different era. The goaltenders were great goaltenders, but they had less padding. It was a whole different game, but you can't take anything away from any of these players because it was still a huge, huge accomplishment.
Well, look at, again, I don't have to say it. I'm not saying it again, Kevin. Encyclopedic knowledge.
Val is so good at pulling these things up. I can see him using different names or whatever. Here we go.
It's David Carlson that said that one, and I know he's not talking about me. I got that under control.
Well, it's very nice of him to say. It's just, we're all so passionate about hockey, so passionate about this game that's so close to our hearts. So it's a thrill to be able to talk about it and share anything that I might know with others and hearing them share it with me as well. Al Rollins is a really good story. It just came up a moment ago as well.
Yes.
From Mr. Clark. I mean, Al Rollins was one of those guys. He was the goaltender when Bill Barilko scored the Stanley Cup winning goal. He was the Toronto Maple Leafs goaltender when Bill Barilko scored the goal. And that was 70 years ago on Wednesday, this upcoming Wednesday. And Al Rollins was just a really good goaltender. He played with the Chicago Blackhawks, and they finished sixth that year, 6 out of 6 teams, and yet still won the Hart Trophy as the most valuable player. Now, come on. How do you do that? Well, the team wasn't very good in front of him. But boy, oh boy, he must have been a great goaltender to pull that off. And he was tall, slim, and a really skilled goaltender. No, he didn't have a brother in the league, so we'll stay away from that one then.
All right. Hey, Kerry, you're an impressive fellow too.
There we go.
Thanks, David. That's kind of you. And then Pete Bombacci, as we move on here, did Phil have great hockey skill or more heart than anything? Great picture there, Val. Holy crap.
That's Al Rollins, by the way, in that photo. Great stuff. Peter, that's a great question. I think what he had was a very unique combination of both. I mean, he had great passion for the game. He continued on after his game to actually be a general manager, a coach. He continued with the game for some time, real passionate in the game, but he also had elite skills too. There's no doubt about it. Made the difference going from Chicago to Boston, and then he finished up his career with the New York Rangers as well.
Obviously, with Kevin Shea, thank you so much for enlightening on this. We're going through a couple of more great brother combinations in the NHL. There's one that actually, there were 6 brothers, and I actually have their names, so we'll talk about them in a few seconds. But I also want to do a shout out to Val and Jordan. Guys, honestly, this show has evolved so great to this point, with you guys being able to just Google on a dime, and I'm just like Gretzky would turn on a dime. You guys can Google on a dime, and I love it. I know I see down in the green room the Sutter brothers. We're not going there. We're going to go to obviously 2 of arguably the best or close to the best goal scoring prowess as far as 2 brothers go. One a little bit better than the other, but you cannot forget Bobby and Dennis Hall.
Oh boy. You sure can't, that's for sure. So Bobby, from the time he was a kid, was going to be a superstar. There was no doubt. He had the looks, but he certainly had the skill too. Just a great, great player. So he joins the Chicago Blackhawks in the 1950s, and he he just, again, he has elite skills. This is a little bit later on in his career, but he started off wearing number 16, as I recall, and didn't graduate then he went to number 7 and then to number 9 a little bit later on in his career. In that photo there, you can see that he's got a real warp to the blade of his stick. And that was one of the secret weapons that he had. He already was a great goal scorer, incredibly strong, growing up on a farm in Point Anne, Ontario. He had that great upper body strength from baling hay. We've seen the photos through the years, and raising cattle, but he used it on the ice as well. When he and Stan Mikita almost simultaneously discovered the warp stick, the warp blade on the stick, it took it to another level altogether, because already a great, strong goal scorer, when they added the dimension of a warp stick, it added extra speed and added extra tricks to the puck as it went in too. There's no secret to the fact that the goalie mask came into popular usage around the same time as the warp stick, because all of a sudden these things were being propelled over 100 miles per hour and you didn't know where they were going to go. And that was part of the evolution of the game for the goaltenders as well as for the players. So Bobby Hull, great goal scorer, 50 goals in 50 games as well. He did it a number of times too. Five times. Geez, my notes tell me there. I had to check it out. 5 times he hit 50 or more goals. So that's great.
Incredible.
Yeah, and he was an all-star, a perennial all-star. He was a Hart Trophy winner on many occasions too, 65 and 66. The Art Ross Trophy winner 3 times as the top scorer in the league. So he had it all. Now let's take a look at Dennis Hull.
No, golly.
Not yet.
Golly. No, Kevin, you forgot some of the most important parts about Mr. Robert Hull. What?
Well, the fact
Tell
that
me
he had
about
a
this
son.
picture.
Ah, well, of course. That's the thing that we can't forget, is that, as much as he was a superstar in the NHL, he actually made, in my opinion, the WHA.
Yes.
By his signing with the Winnipeg Jets and all the teams contributing to his salary, but it actually added incredible credibility to the league at a time when they were a fledgling league. Who knew whether they were going to be able to compete with the NHL in 1972, 73? But once Bobby Hull, who was the best player in the NHL at that point, arguably, certainly the best player in the Chicago Blackhawks, when he left for the WHA, all of a sudden it diverted attention. You had to pay attention to the World Hockey Association, because if Bobby Hull was going, and quickly thereafter, Jerry Cheevers and J.C. Tremblay and Derek Sanderson and Bernie Perrant, and you can name any number of
Andre Lacroix.
Absolutely. Then it became a legitimate league, and it paled a little bit in comparison to the NHL. The NHL did have a bit of a head start, but for those 7 seasons, the WHA was a terrific league. Yeah. It was ownership issues as much as anything. The teams jumping from city to city just because they needed the support. But Bobby Hull single-handedly made that league, in my opinion.
And he was unavailable to Team Canada 72, where his brother played. This is Dennis. I think this is his picture when he played in the 74 series, but he was not allowed to play in the 72 series, right? Because
there was a real hue and cry in 72, because just at that particular time, there was a great, I'll call it a fight, a battle, I guess I should say, between the NHL owners who didn't want to have the WHA encroaching on their territory.
Oh, right. Of course.
So when Alan Eagleson came up with this whole idea and was able to work it through Hockey Canada, which didn't exist at that point, but the precursor to Hockey Canada, Clarence Campbell declared that only Canadian players playing for the NHL or who had signed a contract with the NHL could play in the great Summit Series of 72. And Bobby Hull was one of the ones who, wasn't allowed to play. Derek Sanderson had been picked too, wasn't allowed to play. So it was a real problem. Dennis Hull was actually going to boycott playing because his brother wasn't allowed to play, and he was convinced that, go ahead and play anyway. I think Bobby told him to move forward. Dennis continued to play with the team during that tournament and did very well too, but it was a real sticking point. You're right. The the Soviets played the World Hockey Association, the best of the World Hockey Association in 74.
74.
Yeah, often forgotten because it pales in comparison to the Summit Series of 72. But it was a strong series as well, and a lot of really good players involved in that one too.
Thank you for allowing me my couple of minutes on the Winnipeg Jets.
Of course.
Makes me feel, because I used a Christian 1000 with the Bobby Hull curve. And it's actually, Phil Pritchard has it. I won the scoring race. And Bobby Hull, I played with Bobby Hull Jr.
Oh,
and I won the scoring race from Bobby Hull Jr.'s slap shot off my butt. And Bobby Hull, he was at the game, living in Winnipeg. He came in the dressing room and he signed it with a pen, not with a magic mark. So when you're at the resource center, ask Phil, because it sits there. And the twerp, honestly, it looks like you could a scoop of ice cream. All right, to Dennis Hull, also
Dennis
somebody
Hull,
that was kind of forgotten a bit.
Well, it's tough because you're in the shadow of the Golden Jet. One of the marquee value for Bobby Hull was so high. He was the idol of so many. He took the time to sign every single autograph after a game, whether it was an hour and a half, didn't matter. His teammates were always upset because, come on, Bobby, hey, my fans, I got to take care of the fans. And people never forgot that. I don't know if anybody has signed as many autographs as Bobby Hull has, and it's a treasured thing for sure. So Bobby had a huge impact on the league. To live in the shadow must have been very difficult. Dennis Hull, I never had to face it, so I don't know. But Dennis Hull, I was told, had a harder shot, but people didn't know where it was going to go. So whereas Bobby could kind of focus on those upper corners or wherever he wanted to put it, Dennis just wound up and the thing could have ended up in the 12th row. You just didn't know. Wicked shot, and a wicked player as well. Very good player too. He was an all-star. He made the second all-star team in 73. He played with his brother for, I don't know how, 5, 7, 8 seasons. So Bobby and Dennis played on the same team through those 60s and into the early 70s before the WHA. And they made quite a combination. They didn't play on the same line necessarily, but they both had similar talents, the big slap shot. And like that. Dennis was a joker. Bobby had a sense of humor too, and was a great community person. Dennis had that crazy sense of humor. And if you've ever seen him in a banquet or in some kind of a scenario like that, you must go, because he is so darn funny. He takes liberal pot shots at his brother too, and he laughs at his own jokes. And it's as funny as anything to hear him laughing at the jokes that he has too. A real skill. So a great hockey player. He ended his career with the Detroit Red Wings. We forget about that one sometimes too, but a wonderful hockey player, big, strong, great shot, just like his brother. Not quite the same talent level, but boy, he was a very, very good hockey player. There they are.
There they are.
Look at that. The great smiles. Those teeth didn't last very long.
No, not at all. When you see him, he still signs everything. I saw him last year at the Hockey Hall of Fame induction weekend. He just sits there and he's got that big growly voice and an amazing man. Let's talk a little bit about obviously going through. That was the 76 series. That was the picture of Hull. I guess, do you recall, did the WHA play more than one series? Obviously, 74, 76.
I wasn't aware of 76, but they may very well have done so. 76, of course, was the Canada Cup as well. So there we go.
Yeah,
if I can tell a quick story, if you don't mind.
Of course you can. Here's a picture. Here's a picture of Dennis Hull. Just wanted to show it. That's the 72 jersey.
There we go.
Thanks, Jordan.
So if I can tell a quick story, my grandmother worked at a jewelry store down in Windsor, Ontario, my hometown. And a man came into the store, an older gentleman came into the store, and he had a gigantic ring on his hand. And because Grandma worked in a jewelry store, she took quick notice of it. And so she just, was making small talk. And she said, well, I must ask you about your ring. And he said, well, in fact, it's a Stanley Cup ring. Well, my grandmother didn't know a great deal about hockey, but she knew that Stanley Cup and National Hockey League were married together. So she said, well, did you play? my grandson my grandsons, actually, my brother Dale and I are huge hockey fans. He said, "Oh, no, I didn't play, but my sons played. And this was my son Bobby's ring." She said, "Bobby Hull, I can't believe it." He said, "Well, tell me your grandsons' names." Never thought much about it. A couple weeks later, before that, Grandma got Bobby Hull Sr. to sign. I can't remember if that was his name. I think it was to sign a piece of paper for me, and I've got it in my scrapbook. A couple weeks later, I get a postcard to Kevin Shea. Dale got one as well. Your friend Bobby Hull. Oh my God, couldn't believe it. Not long after that, I got one from Dennis Hull too. And then as the years have gone on, I've met Brett Hull a few times, Bobby's son, who was an extraordinary goal scorer too, obviously. And so I've got the entire Hull family practically covered that way. Gary played in the World Hockey Association briefly. I don't have his. But anyway, to get the entire Hull family was a real thrill because of my grandma working in a jewelry store.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
What a story. All right. So as we move and we keep the theme, somehow it remains on this Team Canada 72 theme. Frank and Pete Mahovlich.
Oh,
the Big
boy.
M. My mom's favorite, one of my mom's favorite, of course. She had many, but that was the one she recalled. And I actually recall watching black and white TV with the Toronto Maple Leafs, sitting in Winnipeg with my dad and knowing the Big M.
Yeah, great hockey player. And a bit of a sad story here, although it has a happy ending, which is the good thing. But Frank Mahovlich was recruited by every hockey team in the National Hockey League at that time in the 1950s. He was just a great junior hockey player up in the Timmins area, and everybody wanted him to sign. And the Detroit Red Wings were offering a fruit orchard for his father. And, you know, what was the deciding factor was the fact that the Toronto Maple Leafs were tied to the St. Michael's Majors in the Ontario Hockey Association and could offer a Roman Catholic education for their son. And that was the deciding vote for Frank going to join the Toronto Maple Leafs. He went to the St. Michael's Majors, and he escalates to the National Hockey League, wins the Calder Trophy in 1958. And that's just around the time that the Leafs went from being a pretty poor team through the 1950s to all of a sudden becoming the powerhouse that went on to be a dynasty in the 1960s. Frank Mahovlich was at the front of that. Dave Keon joining shortly thereafter, also from St. Mike's, picking up some other players, including Johnny Bauer. But Frank Mahovlich was wonderful to watch. I grew up with watching him as a young boy, and it was that long, strong stride, that big shot from the wing, strong as a bull as well. It was wonderful to see him play. The problem was, and this is the downside that I referenced a few moments ago, was that Punch Imlach, who was the coach and a very winning coach for the Leafs, he guided them to 4 Stanley Cup champions through the 1960s, but he treated all of the players the same. And coaches, in many cases, cannot do that. You have to treat people with different skill sets differently. And Frank was a very sensitive young man. And so he didn't like the fact that Punch was making him practice really, really hard in the morning of a game and then playing him hard that night, and was really on his case. His stride made him look like he was a lazy skater. He was anything but it made him look that way. And so the fans kind of got on his case too. And Frank, being a sensitive guy, had emotional problems as a result. And he couldn't play for the Maple Leafs or Punch Imlach anymore. And so after they won the Cup in 67, Imlach felt compelled to trade Frank Mahovlich. And he put him together in a big package. It was Mahovlich and Peter Stemkowski from Winnipeg and Carl Brewer. Pardon me, I can't remember who else was part of it. Pardon me. For Norm Ullman and Paul Henderson and Floyd Smith. And so it was a great big deal. And it was a new lease on life for Frank Mahovlich. All of a sudden, the monkey was off his back. He didn't have the same pressures that he had in Toronto. The coaches treated him differently in Detroit. It was a new lease on life for him. A couple of years later, he gets traded to the Montreal Canadiens. And that's where he really, really flourished. He was great in every place he ever played, but he really, really flourished with the Montreal Canadiens as well. So he won 4 Stanley Cup championships with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He won 2 with the Montreal Canadiens. Played with his brother Peter in Montreal as well. Peter won 4 Stanley Cup championships as well. He won 2 with Frank on the team as well. Peter was younger by 8 years, so it was the same sort of situation as Maurice and Henri that we talked about earlier, is that by the time that Frank was starting to really escalate his career, move into the junior ranks, head off from there, Peter was still a kid. Peter didn't have the same kind of skill set, but he was big, he was strong, and he had his own game as well. So we had the big M and we had the little M, and they were great players and played together during that 1972 Summit Series.
Yeah, here's a great picture. Look at that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's Pete on the left, Frank on the right.
Unbelievable. I think Val had a picture of Frank at St. Look at that picture.
Oh,
St.
there we
Mike's.
are. That's with the St. Michael's Majors. There we go. What a lovely
Little
shot.
bit different curve than Bobby Hall's, I see.
That's for sure. He had a backhand, whereas Bobby Hall didn't. That's a great shot. Your producers are top notch, I'll tell you.
Oh, they're unbelievable. Hey, talk about, here's a great picture now of Peter Mahovlich. Kind of very similar to the situation with Bobby and Dennis. Pete kind of was living the shadows of Frank, but still a very, very good player.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you've got it exactly right. It's got to be tough for siblings to play together. It's got to be a real joy as well. It'd be nothing like having your brother on the team. But the younger brother, usually, not always the case, but the younger brother quite often is overshadowed by the older brother. And that was the case here, too. You know, he had his own identity, but he was usually known as the little M, you know, because it was a reflection of the big M.
And he was bigger, actually.
Yes, exactly. He's a great player on his own, too. But, yeah, you live in the shadow of your brother. I don't know about you and Lawrence. I know in my case, my brother went on an entirely different route than I did in my career path. He went on to be an outstanding teacher. It would have been tough for him to get into the music industry or the media industry and follow, perhaps, not that I was that great necessarily, but it would have been tricky because people measure you by your siblings. And I think that was the case here, too. Pete, great player, wonderful player. He went on to play with the Pittsburgh Penguins at the end of his career as well.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Well, those are 2 tremendous brothers that also very close. I got a chance to bring, I don't know if you recall this, but I brought Team Canada 72 members to Hanover, Germany, where we put on an exhibition between Team Canada 72 against Joseph Campella was the referee.
Oh, wow.
We did a celebrity. Rod Sealing was there. Don Orey was there. Ron Ellis was there. Pete Mahovlich was there.
Oh, wow.
Paul Henderson was there. It was an incredible event. And I got to talk with Peter. What a nice man. A mountain of a man, like very large man, but very soft-spoken, very articulate, very concise. Like it was not boisterous. You know how Phil Esposito was, rah, 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 he stole the room. Pete was just very calm and cool.
And yet very, very funny as well. He's a laugh riot as well. Hard to believe that 72 series is going to celebrate its 50th anniversary next year. Boy, oh boy.
Yes, and don't forget, the WHA celebrates its 50th anniversary next year. So it's going to be a great year of celebration. Hey, listen, let's move on to Kevin. Thank you so much for taking extra time. You've been absolutely amazing.
I love everything about this. I'll keep going until the streetlights come on.
Well, here you go. I've said this before. This is Robert Wine, but with what today's about, I need to do it again. I simply don't know what Kevin Shea doesn't know about the past and the present, about anything and everything to do with hockey.
You know, I'm just a fan like everybody else, and I've read a ton. I've studied a ton. I've made it my life's work now, but it's just the joy of my life to be able to talk and research and write about hockey. Just a big fan. I wasn't much of a hockey player, did the very best I could, but boy, oh boy, do I love being involved in the game from this side of things. So yeah, thank you.
You're a heck of a
lovely compliment. Thank you.
you're a heck of a road hockey player. We played together, obviously, with our producer, Val. We will do that again. That is on our bucket list. Obviously, moving now to another family. This is probably, it's unbelievable. All right, let's see. We're going to say the Sutters. We're going to give people a few minutes. We're going to say the Sutter brothers. That's who we're going to talk about. There's 6 of them. Let's see how quickly we can get who's out there, who can get all 6 brothers' names up there. You can just talk without names. There's no other family that's had 6 brothers play in the National Hockey League.
Oh, God, no, not even close. Off the top of my head, boy, oh boy, I could very well be wrong. So all of a sudden, Robert's going to challenge me on this one. I can only think of 3 from a family, the Conakers, actually. I can't.
There are 3?
Yep.
Stahl brothers?
Oh, of course. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great one, actually. The Subans, but to have 6 make it to the National Hockey League, and every one of those Sutters will tell you that the oldest one, who went on a different path, was probably the best player of all, could have easily made it 7 if he hadn't chosen a different path.
That's right. You're right.
But to have 6 Sutters playing in the National Hockey League, and all of them were cut from that same cloth, just determined, fierce. If you went in the corner with an opponent, you knew that the Sutter was coming out with the puck. They were all really, really good hockey players. And it's a real testament to them that so many of them have gone on to be scouts, or certainly coaches, as we see now as well. Some with owning minor league franchises as well. But they just a real testament to that farm mentality that the Sutters had growing up and in Viking, Alberta, and bringing to the National Hockey.
Viking, Alberta, you're right. Hey, listen, not many people got, we only had a couple people register some names, but most importantly, Val forgot one, and it was Darryl Sutter. Obviously, how could you forget that one? But that's okay, we'll give it to him. So we've got, of course, not in this particular order, we've got Brian, Duane, Darryl, Brent, Rich, and Ron.
Yeah.
Incredible when you think about it.
Well, and so the latter 2 that you mentioned are twins, which was another great story too. There have been twins in the NHL, obviously the Sedin brothers, etc. But to have twins, but they weren't able to orchestrate playing together from the draft. They ultimately did get a chance to play together too. But every one of those Sutters in that picture was a fierce competitor, and you wanted them on your team. They were leaders. They were great hockey players, and they brought a work ethic that was beyond compare.
So obviously, Darryl is back in the forefront, being the coach of the Calgary Flames. Out of all of them, is there someone that you recall, being the best? Or were they basically? I looked at some of the numbers. All of them played, and none of them were under 275 goals in the National Hockey League. I think maybe Val or Jordan can throw up some of the numbers, but all of them very good players in their own right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Brian was the one that stands head and shoulders over the rest. Not head and shoulders, maybe just forehead taller than the other brothers. I really liked the way that Brian had played, and boy, oh boy, what he brought to the St. Louis Blues was quite incredible too. But just, every one of them was a star player in their own right. And all together, when you add up the points from all of the Sutters together, they are the highest scoring family in NHL history. Now, there's obviously some people that we'll talk about a little bit later on who did it with fewer players or came close with fewer players, but to have the 6 of them all collecting their points, 2,934 points, just an incredible, incredible story.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. All right, so we're going to move on now. I don't have in front of me our next set, but I know the picture is coming up right here. When you think about brothers, we've obviously heard of some of the greatest duos, and there's other ones, of course. I think where we're going next is the Conakers. Obviously, this is back at the beginning of hockey almost. All the pictures that I could find were black and white, but this is an incredible one. Lionel Connector is the first one.
Yeah, during the 1930s, the Conakers owned the NHL. They were so strong. There's Lionel Connector playing with the New York Americans. Lionel was a defenseman. Of the three Conekers that we're going to talk about, he was likely the least talented of them, and yet he was the most athletic. Lionel was voted as the greatest sports personality of the first half of the last century. He was an amazing football player, baseball player, lacrosse, wrestler, boxing, what have I missed? Baseball, and then hockey as well. Just an incredible athlete. Went on to be a politician as well. Some people would remember the name Brian Conaker, played with the Toronto Maple Leafs in 1967, and Brian is the son of Lionel. Lionel's in the Hockey Hall of Fame, was voted in 1994. He won the Stanley Cup with the Chicago Blackhawks in 1934, and with the Montreal Maroons, there's a team we haven't heard for a while, in 1935. So just an extraordinary hockey player, but he was a defenseman, whereas the two that we'll talk about next were both forwards.
Well, of course, we'll move on to Charlie.
Well, Charlie is my favorite. Charlie is one of my favorite Leafs of all time. Of course, I never saw him play, but he's one of the reasons that Toronto has Leaf Nation now. Because in the early days of the NHL, the early days of radio, people would gather by their radio so they could listen to the game. And the only games you got at that time were the Maple Leafs facing off against whichever opponent it was at that time. And Charlie was the superstar of the Toronto Maple Leafs at that particular time. Won a Stanley Cup in 1932 with the Maple Leafs. Everybody who has done any research will argue that the Leafs should have had many more Stanley Cups than that, with the number of great stars they had on their team. You know, the kid line was Joe Primo, Busher Jackson with Charlie Conaker. They had Lawrence Chabot in net. They had Red Horner on defense. They had Hap Day on defense. All of these great players, and yet the only Stanley Cup that they won was in 1932. But Charlie, having said that, Charlie was the leading goal scorer in the league. I don't know how many times. Let me check my notes here. Boy, oh boy, led the league in goals 5 times, led the league in points twice. He had a booming shot, an extraordinary shot from what we heard. It was nothing to hear about him putting a puck through the boards. So it was that. He lived large as well. So did Lionel. They were as well known for their off-ice exploits as they were on the ice too. But Charlie was voted into the Hockey Hall of Fame as well, boy, oh boy, if I remember correctly, 67. I better check my notes.
You can check your notes. You're more than welcome.
1961. Pardon me, 1961.
All right. Kevin, stop that.
I'm sorry. He died in 67. There we go. But just a legend whose legend has faded a little bit just because it was so many years ago. But whenever there are votes of the greatest Leafs of all time, Charlie Conaker's name still continues to come up. He's got a statue on Legends Row outside of Scotiabank Arena as well.
Well, Kevin Val is really doing his homework today. He's got an incredible, you may not know this, I know you do. In the summer of 1935, Charlie and his brother Lionel opened up a very famous
gas station.
There you go. On Yonge and Davenport.
Yep. So for those who know the Toronto area, there's the Masonic Temple at the corner of Yonge and Davenport. It was across the street and down a tiny bit towards Avenue Road from there. And so now this is a different picture. This is after retirement. There's Charlie on the left. There was a brother named Bert. Bert was the twin brother of Roy, who we'll talk about in a minute. Bert lost an eye in a road hockey contest with Charlie had taken a shot, and Bert lost one eye. And there's Lionel on the right-hand side during his political days. But they owned a gas station during the 1930s, and cars would be lined up forever because it was the Conekers who were there. And there'd be nothing to see Charlie come out and clean your windshield or Lionel pumping your gas. And Lionel also had his office. His parliamentary office was above the gas station as well. It's long gone. It's been gone for some time. There was a historical.
Is that where the Canadian Tire is? No,
the other side of the street.
No, but is Canadian, so Mesa and across the street is a Canadian Tire?
Yes. So on the same side of the street as the Masonic Temple, there used to be a club called the Copa that was just around the corner. But that was on the west side of Yonge Street. On the east side was the Canadian Tire.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, wow, incredible. Thank you for that. I just want to give you an update. It has just come out. Holtby will start for the Vancouver Canucks tonight
Oh,
against your Toronto Maple Leafs. How
all
cool is
right.
that?
I like
Now
Holtby as
another
well.
one. Wow, unbelievable. You're getting so many compliments. Hey,
No.
guys, this is Gooch Live. This is not Shea Live. This is Gooch Live. Don't forget.
Stop it. No, they're talking about unbelievable how talented the Conakers were. That's what he's saying.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Okay, so continue, please. Obviously, we're going to talk about Roy.
So yeah, the third brother is Roy, and he was the younger brother of the other two. And Roy was one of those guys who had to live in the shadow of his big brothers because as big as they were on the ice, literally and figuratively, Roy was a little bit smaller, still a big boy, but a little bit smaller, played a more of a finesse game than his brothers did, and not quite as boisterous as his brothers were as well. But boy, oh boy, he was a great hockey player. Played with the Boston Bruins, later played with the Detroit Red Wings as well. Spent some time with the Chicago Blackhawks, where Charlie was the coach. Really interesting fact to me, anyway, was that Roy was intent on beating his brother Charlie's goal scoring exploits. So he finished up with 201 goals, whereas Charlie had 200 goals at the time.
Of course.
No, did I get that right? No, sorry. 226 goals. Charlie had 225. He just wanted to beat him by one. He's in the Hockey Hall of Fame as well. He was voted in 1998. So it's the only family to have three members or at least three brothers in the Hockey Hall of Fame. The Patricks have had more, but they came from multi-generations. But to think that Lionel, Charlie, and Roy are all in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And we wonder about that other brother, Bert, who was a very, very good hockey player as well. If he had played in the NHL, could he have equaled those exploits? Tough to say, and we'll never know, obviously.
Well, we're learning lots. Thank you, Barry, for popping in and saying you learn lots every time we're with Kevin. I agree 100%. And he keeps the boys hopping because they're pulling up pictures from all over the place. Obviously, the Conaker brothers, an incredible story. Where we go next is also just a wonderful story. The Dryden's.
Oh, boy. Yes, absolutely. Well, again, they took different paths. They're both goaltenders. We're talking about Ken Dryden and Dave Dryden. Both goaltenders. They both took different paths to the NHL. Same sort of situation as I talked about with Phil and Tony Esposito, where Dave Dryden went through the junior route. He played at St. Mike's. And actually made his NHL debut as an emergency backup goalie. He was sitting in the stands when the New York Rangers lost their goalie. I think it was Gump Worsley at the time, and he was called in to be the replacement goalie. He was by being part of St. Mike's, he was part of the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, but they had to supply a spare goalie. So he made his NHL debut playing with the New York Rangers against the Maple Leafs. But Dave went that route, whereas Ken took the U.S. college route, just like we talked about with Tony Esposito. And in an odd bit of fate, while playing with Cornell in the U.S., he was drafted by the Boston Bruins and didn't know it. He didn't know he was in the Boston Bruins organization. Boston ultimately traded him to the Montreal Canadiens, and it wasn't until several years into his NHL career that he found out that he had once been drafted by the Boston Bruins. They certainly didn't have the hoopla that the drafts of today have, as you can only imagine. But Ken Dryden, of the two goaltenders, it's tough to really compare. But Ken was the superstar. He also had a great team in front of him as well. But I want to draw your attention to one date, March 20th, 1971. And that's the time that Ken Dryden faced his brother, Dave Dryden, in goal. It was Ken's first game. And it didn't start off that way. It's really interesting. Ken was playing with Montreal, and Dave was playing for Buffalo at that time. So Punch Imlach was the coach and general manager of the Buffalo Sabres. And he really was hoping that he could have Dave start the game in goal and facing Ken Dryden in goal. That would be great PR, and it would have been. But Montreal started Rogie Vachon that night. So Ken was sitting on the bench. Well, Rogie Vachon gets hurt. And so they have to bring in the spare goaltender, who is Ken Dryden. Well, when that happened, Punch Imlach pulled his goaltender, I wish I could remember who it was, and put Dave Dryden in net. So the two brothers faced each other for the first time. And there's a great shot from that particular game.
Unbelievable. Thanks, pal.
Wow. Your producers are extraordinary. Look at that. There we are. Ken on the left, picture. Dave on the right.
Now, I do want to do a shout out. Dave is very close friends with my father-in-law, Tony, and I've been informed that Dave is struggling a little bit with his health. So we are going to send out all of our prayers and thoughts to Dave Dryden as he battles through. I don't know the illness, but certainly hope that he's back on his feet again. But wow, what a God.
For sure. Well, and he also went to the World Hockey Association too, which was another one as well. Just a terrific duo of goaltenders. There he is with the Edmonton WHA franchise, but he was also an innovator. And you can see his mask there. He was one of the first ones to marry the face mask with the God, how do I describe it? With the goggle type protection around the eyes as well. He was really an innovator when it came to that. And it's still being used today by almost every goaltender too. Great tall goaltender, just like his brother. Both of them very, very strong goaltenders. Dave worked with the NHL for a number of years too after his playing career was over. Ken, as we know, went on to scholarly pursuits. In fact, he left the NHL for a while to finish his law degree, came back and continued to excel. Later on was the president of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's a great author. His books are looked at as some of the greatest books that have ever been written for hockey, and just a quality guy. If you had him on here, he'd be talking more than me. I know that's hard to believe, but it's very true. No, he's known for being long-winded, but boy, oh boy, is there ever some eloquence and some intelligence in what he has to say.
I was on stage with him, and I didn't get a word in edgewise. You know, I can, but he's very methodical, very slow, very articulate. Every word is perfectly placed. Like there's not even a hair out of place when he goes. Okay, listen, those were that. Thank you for that. That was two great stories about Ken, of course, and Dave. Wonderful picture, and of course we leave the best for last. These two brothers obviously was really one-sided, and there was another one, I think, if I'm not mistaken. There's Wayne and Keith. No, not the Primos, my good friends Keith and Wayne. Wayne Gretzky, Keith Gretzky, and Glenn Gretzky. And a lot of people forget about Glenn.
Well, Brent, actually. Yeah.
Brent. I said that.
Yeah, no. And so that's the great thing. So
I called him.
There they are. So we have Keith on the left, Wayne in the middle, and Brent on the right. Now, the only two that made it to the NHL are Wayne and Brent. Keith was a really good junior hockey player, a senior hockey player as well. He's an executive with the Edmonton Oilers right now. So he continues with the whole hockey side of things. But it was Wayne and Brent that went to the NHL. Wayne, so just before I frame this, they're the brothers who have the most combined points in NHL history. Wayne had 2,857. Brent added 4. But together, they were the biggest collection of points by siblings. Brent,
you know how much farther ahead they would have been if Keith would have made the NHL?
Brent played with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Wayne, as we know, starred with the Edmonton Oilers, won 4 Stanley Cups with the Oilers, went on to change the face of hockey by going to Los Angeles and making the Kings a focal point in the NHL. Played briefly with St. Louis and then finished his career with the New York Rangers. And in fact, I believe it was on this anniversary in 1999. I think it was on this day that Wayne played his very final NHL game. So just an extraordinary family. But that's going to lead me to something. And if you don't mind if I veer off for 1 second here.
You can veer off anytime you want.
Well, so how is it, and I talked about it with my own brother a little bit, but how is it that so many of these players, so many of these families, they come from the same DNA, they have the same opportunities, and yet one seems to stand head and shoulders over the other. So we saw it with Wayne and Brent Gretzky. Keith as well was a very good player. But Wayne was so extraordinary. The other two were very good enough to make it to the NHL, which is really a feather in his cap. Keith didn't quite get that far, but he certainly continued with his hockey career. But we look at others as well. Mario Lemieux had a brother who played in the NHL. It took a little bit of research for me to remember Alain Lemieux. Alain played just over 100 games in the NHL. But again, he couldn't be nearly as good as his big brother, Mario. Brian Trottier and his brother, Rocky, good player, made the NHL, but he wasn't Brian Trottier. Patrick and Stéphane Roy. Well, Stéphane was a forward, so it's a whole different matter. He only played 12 games with Minnesota, but Patrick Roy, it's hard to say, Roy, there we are. Patrick Roy, he was a Hall of Famer in goal. So it's hard to imagine. Going way back, Gordie Howe had a brother named Vic who played with the New York Rangers. We remember Gordie Howe, certainly. We don't really remember Vic Howe, and yet, again, the same thing. They came from the same DNA. They came from the same background. They had the same opportunities, and yet one rises above. And I'd love to know, I wish I was a geneticist who could really explore this even further, because how is that possible? They all, like I said, had the same opportunities, came from the same family, the same equipment, and yet one excels so much. Again, to make it to the NHL, to make it to any kind of elite, there's Brent, to make it to any kind of an elite level like you did, Carrie, is totally admirable. But to have those kinds of successes that we talked about with Mario and Brian, Patrick, Gordie, Wayne, et cetera, et cetera. There we go. There's Gordie on the left and his brother Vic on the right-hand side.
I had no idea. No idea. I did not know that. And Val also brings up the Bure brothers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Boy, oh boy. Now, Val Bure had a good career, has a lovely wife who's an actress that we remember. But think about, pardon me?
We do? I don't remember his wife.
Candace Bure was in Family Ties. I wish I could remember others.
Oh my God! Okay, yeah, no, all right.
But Pavel Bure was the better of the two brothers. Again, they both played in the NHL. Both were very good hockey players, but Pavel was the superstar of the two and is in the Hockey Hall of Fame. So it's one of those odd questions that you have to ask yourself. You don't know the answer. We never will, but it would be really interesting to explore that deeper. Anyway, there we go.
Wow. Listen, I don't even learn. I learn a lot about hockey, but now I'm understanding there's actresses in our midst. Hey, listen, obviously, there are so many more brothers. I was going through the list. There's, arguably the Hunter brothers and, Keith and Wayne Primo, the Primo brothers. They were a big part of our existence here at Stop Concussions and Shoot for a Cure, of course. Out of all of them, I know it's tough to sometimes pick your favorites, but here are the two Stahl brothers, and they continue on playing. I think there's a third, if I'm not mistaken. How many more brothers can we have playing? And they're from Thunder Bay.
Yep, absolutely. 4 Stahl brothers who were all stars of their in their community. I'm not sure whether Jared made it to the NHL or not, but 3 of them starred certainly in the NHL. And if Jared did, it was very briefly. So to think about it again, Stahl brothers from a smallish community, and yet here they are, and they certainly were the stars of their team for a good long period of time, continue to do so now, playing more than 1,000 games. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, they're saying Jared was kind of a bubble player.
Yeah.
Which is kind of neat. I think there's a younger one coming up. I think I read that, a youngster coming up.
That's I think his career stalled.
Jared.
Never mind. Continue on, please.
Oh my God, that was awful, but I loved it. Jared played 2 games in the National Hockey League.
Well, there we go.
That's a real bubble.
Brothers. Yeah, there's 4 brothers.
That's a real bubble player.
Yeah.
All right. So out of all the brother packages that we heard, obviously, I know that you had mentioned the Conaker brothers were very special. And of course, the Gretzky brothers. But again, it was one side. That was one-sided. We had Dennis and Bobby, which again, more so. But was there a pair that was you could almost say were equal?
Oh boy. Well, in a different way, Phil and Tony Esposito. Phil was elite as it came to goal scoring.
True.
Tony was elite when it came to goaltending. So they weren't head to head. I mean, they played head to head a number of times, but you can't really say, like, it's hard to measure when you're talking about different positions. Boy, oh boy. I mean, all of them had their own.
Well, let me say this. Let me ask you this question then, of course, as we'll end the today's show. You've been more gracious with your time today. I know you could go on forever, but we want to save some for next week because we can't run out of gas here, kid. Let's go to Maurice and Henri to end the show, because there are two brothers, arguably one with 8, one with 11, but yet the one with 8 had more recognition. Maurice Richard, the Rocket, everybody, and I'm going to have Randy Thomas join us. He was part of the Rocket. He was one of the actors that played Toe Blake. So I'm going to ask him to come on with you and I, because we could talk about that specifically. Maybe we'll do that next Sunday if you wouldn't mind, because I think that'd be really cool. He's the guy that's doing those commercials for the eggs. Really? You're weird. No, you're really weird. No, sure. No, your pants are weird. No, you're weird. And then, your girlfriend looks like your mother. He's the actor for that. So we'll get him on for that. But let's talk really quickly about, not really quickly. Let's talk about Maurice and Henri. Obviously, Maurice, they burned down a city because of him. Obviously, with the suspension. Henri was always kind of. You don't really, obviously we know him, but he wasn't as pronounced as Maurice. Why was that?
He was a different player. He had a different personality. He was, Maurice was a leader in many ways. He was boisterous. He was a leader on and off the ice. He got all the press for so many years. Henri was a different player. He was skill. He was softer in the dressing room. He didn't have the same makeup that his brother did, and yet he played for many years. He went on to be a captain for the Canadiens as well, and in doing so, won 11 Stanley Cup championships along the way. Very different players, but both elite in different ways. And the age difference, I think, is a big part of it. Maurice wouldn't really know Henri all that well until they started to play together. Whereas Henri could always look up to his brother, listen to his exploits on the radio and later on TV, and find out more about him. But having a 15-year difference is quite substantial. So different kinds of players entirely. There was actually another brother as well, and I wish I could remember his name, and I can't. But he tried
find that.
If you could, that'd be great. He went to training camp with the Canadiens, and the three of them actually showed up on a line for a little while together. He didn't make the team, but he was a very good hockey player as well. So that would have been the first. Well, it wouldn't be the first of the threes because the Conakers would have been an added dimension with the Richards. But it was just Maurice and Henri, who both are in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and with good reason.
Right. Okay. Listen, I know Val is looking that up, trying to find it really quickly before we end the show. So I'm going to throw another one out to the Stastny brothers. We never mentioned, of course. Were they not the first foreign set of brothers to play in the National Hockey League? That's coming from Val.
I would think so, absolutely. And what was marvelous was, first of all, they had to elude the Iron Curtain to come over to North America to play. And they're playing with the Quebec Nordique. And they played on the same line together. And so there's Peter, Anton, and Marion Stastny playing together. And just outstanding players. They were really great and really put some identity to Quebec at that time. Great stuff. Marion actually ended his career with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Wasn't quite the same player that his two brothers were. Peter's in the Peter.
There they are.
There we are for sure.
Peter Anton.
There we are. Went on to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame, but there they are, a terrific line together. and just, we don't talk about them often enough, but boy, they were dynamic in their time and really helped lead that Quebec team during that special era.
I'm going to stump you. I'm going to stump you. Who's the Islander with the C on him?
Denny Potvin.
Come on, I knew that. Why'd you have to do that? Listen, we're really working diligent.
He was trying to be the fourth Stastny. It just didn't work out. Yeah.
Pretty good player in his own right. We do have some breaking news. Val has found the name of the third brother, and he's just working so hard to see if we can get a picture. So I'm going to just say to you right now, thank you for all that you do. We'll leave it on this note. When he does find the picture, I know he will. But here's another great comment, and I wanted to post this because I truly cannot do what I do, guys, without you. Robert Wine saying, because I don't think these shows are scripted or rehearsed. Trust me, they're not. Val, Jordan, and the third, holy cow, I forget his name, James, are clearly masters of their domain, finding perfect pictures from the net somewhere. Thank you, Robert.
It's wonderful. As a participant or as a guest on your show, it's so wonderful to be able to talk about them, but to actually have the images emerge on the screen so that we can show the people that we're talking about is a skill. It's a real skill. And the fact that it comes up so quickly as well just makes it great, because then you can identify, it's this person on the left and this person on the right, and it really adds something. If it was just you and I talking, as much as it would be a good situation, to break it up with these photos, occasionally with video, is really special. So kudos to your production team.
Absolutely.
Val, Jordan, and James.
Yeah, well, hang on a sec here. It would be mostly you talking, and people I'd have to be, I could change my background the odd time. You know what? I should. That's really bad that I paid real bad disrespect. I should have done that for you tonight.
I like it. There we go.
All right, listen, we can't find a picture. They've scoured the internet. He's just not there. He obviously didn't play. His name was Rene Richard.
Was it? I didn't even know.
I found one, but I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to show it. So
okay.
But it was Rene Richard.
Wow, there we go. Wait
hey, Jordan, pop up too. Pop up too. We're gonna end the show here. Jordan, pop up with us.
Hey guys.
That's the team, kids. Those are the guys. Val has taught the young guys how to do it, and I'll tell you what. Anytime you want some, and I had Jordan on Aussie Style last night, and Jordan's been with us for a couple months.
A little over a month, I think now.
Okay, well, that's with me. That is a couple of months. That you've lasted that long is incredible. But the fact of the matter is, I actually learned this young man has traveled the world playing ice hockey as a goalie.
Oh wow! We'll have to recruit him.
No, Val's. That's a touchy spot.
Well, no, because I know that Val was injured at one point and couldn't play goal. So maybe we need a goal. We'll talk about this later on.
Yeah, I can't play goal anymore. I'd love to, but I can't, so I gotta limp out front. So.
Perfect.
I saw that in our ball hockey game when you tripped over the blue line.
Stop it now.
After the guy jumped me and almost beat the tar out of me.
I know, what an idiot. I still remember that.
Was unbelievable. It was just a fun game, and the guy was beating me up. I was playing with.
It was me.
No, yeah, it should have been. Well, I was hogging the puck, but I had just flown back from Australia, and we were doing a charity event, and I had broken 3 ribs, so I was hobbling. Thank God I did have Val there, because the kid literally came after me, and Val stepped in to save Gouche's life, and he was probably about 30 years younger. I'm not even sure what I did. It's crazy. Anyway,
they were taking it too seriously for a charity event. We've all been there, right? So
maybe it's when I gave him the T-shirt I won from the tournament the year before. I'm not sure. Maybe that threw him off. Hey, listen, I want to thank Jordan and Val for doing this. I think, Kevin, obviously what you've said, the fact that you guys take time and energy to pull these pictures up as quickly as you can really makes a huge difference. And that, making the comments, some of them are wrong, but most of them are right. Here's a classic example. Jared was a black sheep.
Yeah, it was Eric, Mark, Jordan, and Jared. Yeah. Everyone's still playing other than Jordan.
I believe they called Jared up when they were playing against the Rangers when Mark Stahl was a Ranger, because Eric Stahl and Jordan Stahl were both on Carolina already. and Jared was in the Hurricane system.
Yeah, and they're still playing, the three of them.
Yeah,
but is there not a younger one? I'll have to ask Malcolm, because Malcolm was telling me. I think there's another young kid.
If there's
coming.
a fifth, I've heard of a fifth one, but I don't know if that's true or not. So,
all right, guys. So thank you very much for all you do. It really makes our show brilliant. Next week, as I mentioned to you, I will see if I can confirm Randy Thomas. He's agreed to come on the show. You guys have seen him in the egg commercials, but he actually will tell us about the making of the rocket, which was. Kevin, did you like the movie, Kevin?
Oh, yeah, very much so. In fact, one of the guys I used to work with was the director or the producer. I can't remember. And so I had special attention on the show. He told me about the troubles in getting the logos, the NHL logos. But I thought they did a great job on that movie. I thought they did a great job.
Yeah, I too have seen it. When I actually came across it one day, I was just many years ago. I think it had just opened up, had been released, and I actually started watching it, and it was great to see what they captured and what Richard had to go through, all the backlash, the racism, the whole thing in terms of Quebec and English-speaking communities and stuff like that. It was a real eye-opener for players in that time.
Oh, fantastic. Look forward to that. And of course, we're still, and it is confirmed we will be doing it. I just have been kind of overwhelmed with all these pivoting and lockouts and all that sort of stuff. We will do again the slap shot. Of course, we've got some boys that are going to bring a couple other guests that we've never had on before to the slap shot. Wow. We maybe do that in a couple of weeks, Kevin. But the one that I'm really looking forward to is Youngblood. I've got James Richmond. I've tentatively got Steve Thomas, who you know also. I've not heard from Scott McPherson, but I'm sure we can get it. Mike Food is helping because he was part of that. And I didn't even know Power Play. You remember that one?
Yep.
It was a series.
No, I don't.
It wasn't a movie.
I don't.
It was a TV series. It was filmed out of the Hamilton's Cops Coliseum. The team, Dean McDermott was one of the actors for the thing, and it was the Steelheads. They were known as the Steelheads. It was a really cool show. Steelheads? Yeah, the Hamilton Steelheads, right. I think it was, and it was around the time when the gentleman from that, remember, what was his name? He wanted to buy a team and move it to Hamilton. That former owner for a telephone company, was going with the NHL. Was it Nokia or?
I don't know.
Not sure.
I'll you know what? I'll come up with a name after we go off the air. He wanted to buy an NHL team and then move it to Hamilton, but then the Leafs and Buffalo put up a fuss.
Was it the guy from BlackBerry?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Because Graham Rouston was trying to do that, but that was after that.
Yeah, so the
100%.
TV show came out around the same time. Around the same time. I want to say Balsma, but that's not right. Balsma is the coach. So
I know exactly.
The guy from BlackBerry. Buck Silly.
Yeah, that's it. Yes. Yeah. So the show's Power Play came around the same time, so that's how I remember. And then one of our guests was talking about it, and I'm like, oh, I remember that. I used to watch it religiously. It was pretty good ratings. So
1998 was a TV series, 26 episodes, and it only lasted 2 seasons.
And Gordon Pinsent, the other Canadian actor.
Yeah, probably so. Was
coach. He played the version, a Don Cherry style version with the jackets kind of thing. Yeah, it's pretty good. So, and
Michael Riley, Katrina Scorzoni,
and
there's
Paul Stowe, the other gentleman that was in the TV show.
Kevin, you'll love this one.
Due North.
I think it was. Rob Folds was the play-by-play announcer. Don Cherry was Jake Nelson.
Oh, jeez.
Chris Tezzero was in it. Unbelievable. All right. Little bit of tidbit. Yep. Kevin, thank you for taking so much time on a Sunday. It was fantastic to have you as usual. I look forward to next week. I'll make sure I get in touch with you if I nail our buddy Randy Thomas down, and maybe you and I should have a little chat before that, and really maybe we can ask other people that contributed to that movie, because there was a bunch of guys that I know were actually in the movie Rocket. So we'll see if we can get them more on. Hey, Val, Jordan, thank you so much for what you do. And of course, Kevin Shea, hockey historian extraordinaire. We just thank you for your time and energy and educating us. As they put it, You're an encyclopedia.
Always fun to get on here and talk hockey with all of you boys. Thank you guys very much for the opportunity.
Good luck tonight with your Toronto Maple Leafs. We don't make any bets. Don't make any bets. You and I only bet against the Jets, and I think you're up 1 apple fritter.
1 apple fritter, but I think I owe you 2 double-doubles. So, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Okay,
By the end of the season, we'll be the biggest guys around, I'll tell you.
Can't take it up, guys. Have a good night. Toronto versus Vancouver.
Good night, everyone.
You've been listening to Gouche Live with your host, Kerry Goulet, better known as The Gouche, brought to you by the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated.